My name is Jess Servion, and I'm super excited to bring you my new podcast, The Juice with Jess. This podcast is going to be about everything in your customer's journey. We're talking acquisition, awareness, making that purchase, retaining that customer, bringing them back around, and everything in between. This is going to be all about delivering dope brand experiences and talking to some really amazing people who are in the customer experience space, the marketing space, and everything in between. Welcome back to another episode of The Juice with me, Jess, your host. I am super stoked, as I am every fucking week, to bring on my homie, Scott Wicken, who leads copywriting at Dr.Squatch. Scott, tell the crowd who you are.
My name's Scott Wicken. I lead copy at Dr.Squatch, just like you said. Honored to be here.
This is the best copy that we've ever
sat. Yeah, we're done. That's it. It's a wrap.
We're over.
Done. Pleasure to be here in the presence of such a legend.
I'm not a legend.
I've been in digital creative for 13 plus years.
Shit, yeah.
In a range of different capacities. The majority of which is direct to consumer brands, high growth lifestyle brands. In another lifetime before that, I was in finance, and that's a fun career transition story. But copy is kind of the core of what I do. I've also worked in various capacities for men's clothing brands, a range of different CPG brands, fitness, technology. I was a creative director for a men's clothing brand for about 4 years. I was in the freelance space for 3+ years, and then I've been with Dr.Squatch for about 3 years. And the personal care space is really exciting and interesting right now. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks. Well, let's start there, man, because now I'm really interested how you ended it from finance into like this creative e-com world.
Yeah. It's a good story. I think coming out of college, I, like many folks, got a straight up business degree and kind of didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I think the bigger point was more I didn't really know myself. So I worked in commercial real estate finance in various capacities for almost 8 years. And kind of every year that I went along, I got a little more unsatisfied, a little more unhappy, and felt a little more out of place. And once I started kind of working on myself and learning a bit more about myself and what I was good at, what my strengths and weaknesses were, and ultimately what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, it just kind of became clear that this really was not it for me. And my time in finance was a really great experience. I learned a lot of very basic skills, how to show up to work on time, how to lead a meeting, how to write an email,
details.
Basic stuff,
Details.
So certainly it was very formative for me. It ultimately was kind of a round peg in a square hole sort of situation.
Yeah.
And I hit a certain point where I was like, I need to make a change, and quit my job, started over, spent a little bit of time soul searching, and really just kind of wanted to focus on figuring out like what I love to do and how that would ultimately translate into a career. And as cliche as it sounds, I read a great career book. I still think about it all the time. It's called Life's a Bitch and Then You Change Your Career. And
I'll have to read that.
Nice little book, nothing super crazy about it, but it just had some really thoughtful exercises that helped guide me down a path of kind of figuring out what I was into. And that's really what stuck with me, was this one question that still is like seared in my brain. It was, don't think about what your next career is. It was, what do you love and what do you want to be around all the time? And make a list. So I made a list, and it was not finance and spreadsheets, although those things are great. And I certainly still use a lot of the business skills I learned as a young buck in finance to this day. I really value the importance of data and can, crush a few numbers when I need to. But that was really where it started. And I made a list, and it was creative things, art, food, fashion, creative things. And I was like, okay, this is it. So again, a lot of cliches here. I really just started doing some creative things to kind of get my brain moving, get my body moving, get thinking about where I was at. And I started a blog, as one does. And
I started a podcast.
Yeah, right. So this is like, a little bit back in the day. So starting a blog in this time was like starting a podcast now. So that's like definitely the corollary to a great point. And just started writing. I think as I wrote, I realized that I was an English minor in college. kind of more just like because I liked it. And it kind of, and I was like, oh, I really like this. I enjoy this. I feel like I'm good at it. And then I was like, okay, how do I turn this into a career? So, I started thinking about, creative industries. E-com was really kind of taking off at that point. And I just started hustling, did a lot of free work, tried to build my portfolio with random stuff, social media posts, blog posts, kind of some like, and at that point, I really learned what copywriting was, that it is business oriented, marketing oriented words. Right. So emails, all that sort of stuff. So I started doing kind of a little bit of like just practice work, and did a couple quick freelance jobs, and then got my first job working for a women's shoe and accessory brand called Soul Society back in 2012. Yeah. And a woman who is still a great friend of mine and a mentor, a source of advice. She was my first boss there. She took a chance on me, and I'm forever grateful for her for giving me the opportunity to like this, dude comes in, he's never, he clearly has maybe some talent, but doesn't really have like a resume. And she took a chance on me, and I'm forever grateful for that, and was kind of off and running from there, and built up my career from there, expanded kind of in more of the creative direction, creative strategy, worked in production, photo shoots, campaign development, more of the kind of brand marketing stuff. And then, I've been kind of back to copy the last few years, and it's been a great experience.
I think that's really fun. Like your path, right? Like we actually have a really similar path of like, well, I went to art school, and then I ended up in finance, and then I ended up in like all these like very like stuffy things. And I'm just like not good at stuffy. I like was saying this on another episode. I got fired from we all have an office manager job. The lady was like, listen, you kind of suck at this. I'm like, damn.
Hard advice at the time, but maybe the best advice at the time.
Honestly, the best advice, because then I became very detail oriented because of it, right? But I think that's really rad. I think like creative people don't get a lot of credit, like creative minded people, right? Like I think when it comes to the world of business, we don't think like so in a box. We think very outside of the box, and we think about like solving problems in very different ways.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point. And it is a mindset shift. I think the challenge, and one of the things I personally pride myself on, as I'm sure you do as well, is how do I harness my creative capabilities, skill set, experience, but also given that I do what I do, how do I approach the creative with the business mindset? Because that is certainly important. We can't just out here, those of us in pure creative that are working in e-com, sales, marketing, whatever it is, we have to be able to come up with good creative that inspires, resonates, but also it's got to convert, right? And whatever that metric is, whatever situation it is, the creative has to do that as well. So creating good creative. The copywriter really has a way with words. Creating good creative just in and of itself is not enough. To really be good at your job, whether it's copy or whatever, graphic design, customer, there's creativity in everything, engineering, but it's really got to be able to meet those business goals wherever they are. And I think, and that is a big part of how I think about my creative work personally, not just at the execution level, but certainly at the strategic level as well. And being that I'm a little bit further on in my career, I obviously have had the chance to work on a lot of strategic elements and different things. And I think that's a really important part too, is like, great, we need to come up with some creative for this, but we need to think strategically. We need to, get conversion, revenue, whatever those metrics are. And that's a big part of it.
I think what's really important too, like when you're thinking of creative, right? Like you're thinking of creative, and it's not just words of creative. It's not just designs. Like these are all pieces of it, right? But really in the world of like e-com, or even in the world of B2B, you are creating these things, but really what you're creating is for the customer's journey.
Absolutely.
Right? Like there's different pieces of it. So it's like, so think about it, like performance creative, right? The ads you see on Instagram, Facebook, whatever their channels, right? There is a piece of creative work that goes into it, whether it's a static image with some beautiful copy, or it's like a motion of a video, right? That is a piece of creative that you're speaking to that customer in that journey, right? So that's acquisition. Then there's like the CRM pieces, the email, SMS, like, and we're going to get into that because this is the SMS king. So, but
Lord,
the
not
Lord,
a king, not a king.
Lord.
Or low level government
the drama.
functionary.
Drama. We're not self-deprecating around here, okay? Anyway, but my point is, I think you hit a really good point about the fact that creative does have a business function, obviously,
absolutely.
right? And I think and as marketers, I'm a marketer before I'm actually a customer experience person. I love customer experience because I'm dealing with a consumer journey, right? Yeah. We all have a little CX in us. We just don't, we just think it's just support all the time. You know?
Absolutely. I think it's a really great point. And I think that's a perfect sort of reframing of kind of my point there was I think of myself, I'm certainly a marketer. Yeah. My output is creative driven, but there's all kinds of other output, but certainly I'm a marketer at heart. The usage of my output is for marketing. And that's really important to think of yourself as a marketer, think of yourself in the business mindset, because, ultimately that's what it's about. And I think it's a really great way to think about it. We're all marketers. I think every opportunity from, especially CX, every first interaction on the growth side, the acquisition side, that is, like you said, using your word to start a journey, and that's a sales opportunity. Yeah. If you want to put a more direct term on it. But yeah, that's what marketing is all about, is that first step or down the line or solving problems. It's all kind of marketing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So switching gears a little bit, because I do want to talk about Squatch just briefly.
Yeah, let's do it.
And given you lead the copy, my guy, I want to talk about Squatch's tone of voice. Yeah. I think it's really sick. I love it.
We appreciate it. Certainly team effort. The brand voice was established very early on, by our founder. So I was fortunate to come into a situation where you had a lot of really smart, really talented people developed it. And I think, for me, I looked at it this is an opportunity to sort of continue on, help execute on it at different levels and, sort of grow it in places that it makes sense, be a steward of it where it makes sense, define it where it makes sense. I worked on our sort of internal brand book, and that was a really fun project that I was, again, a big team effort there, but that was a great project that I was fortunate enough to be a part of. But, I think ultimately getting to work for a brand, and there's many, unique, fun brand voices out there, but getting to work for a company that has that type of brand voice is really fun. And, it's been a great educational process for me, and, really informed a lot about how I think about, brand voice and tone in general from a creativity standpoint, how it can be used effectively, how it can, how it can't, it can be ineffective. But yeah, ultimately, it's really fun. So getting to a really fun challenge too. And I think, ultimately, I think we're in a time now where, brand has never been more important in many ways. And I think it's obviously how it works in different spaces, industries, product classes is a distinction, but ultimately there's so much noise out there, and customer acquisition is so tough, especially in direct consumer now, that certainly brand voice is a really key area where companies can differentiate themselves, put their product in the hands of people via clever and unique ways. So I think it's a really interesting time to be on the brand side of the work in general. And I think brands now are really taking that more seriously and kind of making sure that it is consistent throughout their entire customer experience, whether it's acquisition, retention, customer service, social, certainly. Every aspect has got to be consistent and interesting and innovative. And I think it's a really fun time out there. It's a really tough time, but I think you have a lot of really smart, innovative people doing really cool and clever things with their marketing. So it's very fun. And, also I think it's a big, I think it's also a time where a lot of people are trying to do it. And I think the key thing that I think about a lot is I think certainly it can involve humor, cleverness, jokes, off the wall creative, whatever. But I think it really starts, for me, at least when I think about it, really starting kind of back a step and thinking about who is your brand? What does your brand stand for? And then from there, kind of developing what your brand voice is. And that's, if I'm working on, brand voice projects, that's really something I think about a lot. And I think it's, I don't think there's one size fits all for brands. I think a lot of brands see the success of companies that use humor in their marketing, and they want to add that into their marketing naturally because it's a great way to stand out and it can be effective. But I think it really starts more before that in developing an idea of who the brand is, what it stands for, and then figuring out if humor makes sense or memes make sense or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think that's a big thing that I think is important to consider as you're thinking about your brand voice, because, for us, I think a lot about not just kind of how we do it, but why we do it. And
right.
that was kind of part of a lot of the work I did originally, was really thinking about establishing sort of that why behind the how. Yeah. Obviously the how is important, like what that looks like practically in your SMS, in your email, all that kind of copy, but ultimately what is it for? Yeah. So I think taking some time to really go through that process and developing the brand voice is not just looking at the output. It's really looking internally, doing all those things internally as a first step to really develop, this is who we are, this is what we stand for. Yeah. And then yes, like how your tone and voice and your output evolves from there is sort of the next step. But you got to figure out like who you are, and maybe you decide like, hey, humor's not for us. We need to focus on what makes us special, who we are, and then we kind of develop from there.
Yeah. And I actually think a lot of brands like don't get that right, like in the steps perspective of it, because I think, you come out the gate and you want to be like that funny brand, and you want to like let it have a personality. And I think like by all means, every brand, every company should have a personality. It should be like fun and punchy and like get people across the line, but like not everybody is fun and punchy.
Yes. I think ultimately it's like another way to look at it. And this is like such an overused term, but like, it's like authenticity really is still a thing. Like I know that is like truly a word that just gets thrown around for everything, but that's really what it is. And it really is the best way to describe what you can do from a positioning standpoint, is like be authentic, right? Or figuring out how to be more authentic, and that starts with kind of internal understanding of your brand, what you do, what your products are. I
think you're absolutely right. I think it's a bit of authenticity, but I also think it's, and I don't see a lot of brands doing this in beginning stages, developing your customer personas.
Totally.
Like, I think it happens after the fact.
Totally.
And I think what also happens, because I see a lot of founders doing this of a brand, right? They're like, I have this product and I'm going to put this product out, and I've done all the research about the product, but then I've skipped the step of consumer research. Like, not in the consumer research in the sense of like taste and like, or feel, or is this going well, in the consumer research of actually like, who is my customer, right? So then you find yourself marketing or creating a voice that has nothing to do with your product. And it's not all the time, but I've seen it enough where I'm like, don't skip that step. Like find the step of who your audience is to then develop that brand voice.
Absolutely. And I think that can really... You're totally right. And I think it's definitely a step that I think more brands need to think seriously about and really do the work on. And it's hard because exercises like that, in the initial branding process, and it doesn't, obviously it's good if it starts in the beginning, but, many brands go through a rebrand or a retooling, and like that can be an important part of that too. So it doesn't always have to be in the beginning, but it is an important step because, you want to think about those things like, who are we marketing to, like you said? What needs is our product serving? What problems are we solving with our product? But also, it's great if our product is solving a problem, serving a need to a community that wants it. But if you're not conveying in a way that connects with them ultimately, then that's really where you can kind of fall short. I think figuring out how to connect with your customer base, your audience, is really the core about it. And it's going to be tough to connect unless you authentically know who your brand is, what your brand is about.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to your point about the customer journey, that connection in the beginning, whatever that is, whether it's an ad, whether it's a SMS, whether it's a promo email, developing that connection right from the jump is really the core to getting people in and getting them to create that limerence with your brand, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can go so many different places in this subject, but I actually really want to get into the subject of the SMS Lord subject,
Your CX is great. That phrase is so last season. We want to hear your CX is incredible because at Customer, we believe in delivering incredible customer experiences. Introducing KIQ Agent Assist, the ultimate CX team AI sidekick built on our CRM to give agents superhero capabilities and efficiency. When building KIQ Agent Assist, we had goals in mind. 1, get rid of long customer wait times and increase the speed of customer resolution. 2, provide the CS team with real-time data for personalized prompts. 3, delegate those mundane tasks to AI. And 4, free up the agents to deliver a human experience. But listen, we didn't stop there. We wanted to deliver more. Check out KIQ Agent Assist's amazing features with suggested responses, automatic two-way translation in 53 languages, and conversation summary. Upgrade your customer experience with KIQ Agent Assist. Try it today and see the difference. Customer, delivering incredible CX every single time.
Let's talk a little bit about CRM, okay?
let's do it.
Well, first we're gonna start at email though, because I actually have a question for you.
Yeah, fire away.
How do you, in copy, because I struggle with this, how do you make an email not so like transactional and promo-like and like transition that copy into like, no, you like, I'm talking to you like you're my homie, man. You need this soap. Yeah. It's sick, you know?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think 2 things. One, I think having talented people that know your brand and can execute, like, I'm sorry, that's not a flashy answer, but that's truly what it is. You know, I think that's a big part of it.
It's brand obsession.
Brand obsession. You have people that live and breathe your brand, also have talent and experience. I think that's important. But I think too, it really starts maybe a little bit earlier on. I think it starts, you know, from a strategy perspective, really thinking about, especially with email and certainly with SMS and other avenues, you know, thinking about, it's never just about one email, right? Yeah. It's about a campaign, a collection of emails, a collection of SMSs. Your marketing effort for a particular product, a promo, whatever it might be, really is the sum of many parts. And I think it's really important to consider that as you're thinking about, like, for a retention scenario, for example. Yeah. And I think that's really important because, you know, having good segmenting and good strategy around a campaign, looking at all the parts, looking at your different audience segments, who you're marketing to and how, I think that sort of like foundational, unsexy stuff is really where success starts. Yeah. And understanding that and knowing that you're solid there then puts your creative in a position to be its most successful. So, but going then to your question about copy, I think it's really about thinking about a couple different things. One, you know, you have an established brand, you have your authenticity, you have people that understand how to market your products, you know, find that balance of humor and education, product information. And I think ultimately thinking about it really conversationally, again, that's like authenticity, you know, the conversational nature of copy specifically is kind of a thing that's talked about a lot, but it's truly the key. And especially as we get into more one-to-one sort of marketing like SMS and WhatsApp and, you know, even forms of social media, you know, that conversational aspect is really, really core, and being able to translate your marketing into conversational copy is really, really important. So I think thinking about it from that standpoint, and then also, you know, like you said, really knowing your audience, knowing what they respond to. Like, are they audience that really responds to bare bones, informational, just get me to the page, get me yes, if that's so great. If you have established a relationship with them where they appreciate your humor, they appreciate your content, it's not every email is transactional. You got to focus on that too. And I think that kind of goes into the point when I was thinking about looking at things holistic as a campaign. Your set of emails can be a range of different, you know, constructions. You have some content, you have blog posts, you have humor, you have product information. Ultimately, if they are receiving your email or your SMS, like, they know who you are for the most part. They know how to get to your website, right? So you don't need to, like, you're not solving a mystery with them. You're really convincing them to get there, right? And how are you doing that? Yeah. And I think certainly there are a lot of opportunities that you do need to sell. Sense of urgency is obviously like a critical component if you're looking at a promo specifically or a limited edition product. But people know how to get to your website, right? So you've got to get them to want to go there, and that's sort of where a little bit of the magic lies, right? And whether you're intriguing them with beautifully designed graphics, whether you're intriguing them with clever copy, You're reinforcing their love of your brand, what they love about your brand in the context of an email. That's really, really where it's at.
Yeah.
So,
okay, let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
This actually has nothing to do with copy at all.
Yeah.
But I remember I have an opinion about this, and maybe it's because I'm a creative. I don't know. And I do think that text-based only emails can sell, but I
100%.
but like straight up, I'm such a slut for good creative. Like I love a good design. I love a good color scheme. I'm like, oh, it just like I love it. But I realize that like that doesn't always sell, right? And like people really combat me on this one a lot, but like how do you find a good balance between text only? Like, so Everyday Dose, for instance, Everyday Dose is only text. There does text only emails, right? In Jack's voice. And I've actually asked Jack this question. I was like, why do you do that? And he's like, they like crush.
Yeah.
He's like, people want my voice. And I'm like, okay, but you also have this beautiful creative. Like, why don't you add that? And he's like, I know it works.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And again, he knows his brand, he knows his audience, and that's not to say there aren't spaces to try new things, but you gotta put yourself in a position to, as you look at your creative and your marketing, you gotta double down on what works, find some avenues to try new things and experiment and try and gain new customers, new audience, followers, whatever that case may be. But yeah, like I think you have to approach it, you know, you always want to be innovating on that. But if you have something that works, double down on that, iterate off that, find new ways to do that similar thing that's working until it doesn't. And then you got to chuck it and try something new.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think plain text is really interesting. I think we're really, especially with email, we are really in a like noise-driven environment. Like inboxes have never been more crowded. Deliverability has never been harder. And how you stand out amongst like the promotions folder, where you land. I mean, even a lot of people have purely like me. I have all of my brands that I follow. I have them filtered in different folders. So really standing out is very hard. And obviously you've got to have in the email perspective, you've got to have your subject lines on point.
I think that's where like
and
text, that should be like crushed.
Yes, but I think internally from a text standpoint, it is a new experience. And I think given just the visual nature of text, it really, if they open it, their engagement with it is going to be a little bit deeper because they're not just scrolling at visuals and then they're off, right?
Yeah.
Because it's text, they have to actually read it.
Right.
And I think that sort of just like by that nature creates a level of engagement, especially if they've already gotten 2, 3, 4 emails from you in the course of a campaign. And depending on the segment, and they open it up and like, whoa, this is not a nicely designed, beautiful email, which certainly that's super important. But it's just something different. I think breaking up that noise, that is a very, very good tool to break up the noise.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think that's really important, like I said, in the context of today's email marketing world.
Totally. Absolutely. I totally agree with you. But like, and maybe this is just because like I'm such a psychopath about customer journeys, right? But when I think of a really good creative email with like images on it, I think of it as like a funnel. It's like you have your subject line, you have your header, then you have like your contacts, and then you have your ender, right? And it's like beautiful for anybody viewing. I'm making an hourglass shape right now, you know,
funnel motion with the hands.
But I totally get that. Like I get that some marketers don't agree with that, but like I think it just varies. I think it varies by your audience and your brand. And for somebody who really loves creative, think about your creative as a funnel. Don't just like throw things on a screen and be like, cool.
Right. And especially, you know, with we're driven by such a mobile environment now.
Yeah.
If you're not designing your emails specifically and all your communications and your websites mobile first, you're already behind the game. And I think that's really critical. And that certainly changes the way you approach your design, of course, but certainly your copy as well, and how they work together and are integrated in not just the email environment, but in the mobile email environment. And I think that's a really critical thing to think about too. But yeah, and again, I think it's all about standing out. I think it's all about testing and segmentation too, ultimately.
Oh,
I think,
absolutely.
As you get into it, you're really finding different segments in your audience. Some may respond well to beautiful design. Some may respond to like just the facts, give me that promo, whatever it is, get me to the site and you're done. I think the text gives you a little bit more personal interaction. You get an opportunity to like speak as a person,
Yeah.
a founder, a persona, a CX rep, whatever the persona is that you're using in your email. And I think a lot of audiences really respond to that vibe, especially if it's more of like a high LTV segment where you're really trying to create a little more personal touch with that experience for them. And, I think, approaching it like a conversation and approaching it like someone you're sending an email to someone for the right audience can do really, really well, especially if they don't need convincing about who your brand is to them.
Yeah.
Right? They are a high LTV audience, a very engaged segment. They're like, yeah, dude, we know what's up. Just tell me what's good. Tell me like what you got, new product, promo,
sick,
give me a little bit of like, give me a heads up, make me feel a little special. So I think, that personalization aspect, again, it really comes down from thinking about your segments and thinking about your audience and thinking about your campaigns holistically.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's switch gears to SMS real quick, because I keep saying like we're gonna get there.
Fave.
We're gonna get there. Yeah. This is also my fave. I think I recently posted on LinkedIn. I recently posted on LinkedIn like a poll about like email and SMS. And I just remember somebody being in my threads being like, no way, I hate SMS. And I'm like, all right, dog, like that's cool. Like,
why?
Yeah, I know. I'm like, why?
why?
I was like, most of these people, most of your consumers in anything, right? Like whether you're a SaaS company, whether you're a brand, most of your fucking consumers are mobile first.
Absolutely.
And so it's like, I love SMS because you can get like quick, punchy, right? And you can get quick and punchy. And like, what's really tight about it is you can be in somebody's hand. And I love we can nerd out. Like I love building flow paths. I love building like one-on-one conversations. But from a copywriter's perspective, how do you make that copy hella punchy?
It's a great challenge. It's a really fun challenge. As we've talked about, I love SMS. I think we're just scratching the surface in terms of opportunity for it to continue to become a tool. If your SMS program is not near or already outpacing your email revenue, I think, it's, you should take a hard look at that ultimately. I think it's, obviously it varies depending on your product, your market, your audience. Certainly there's a lot of room to wiggle there, but I think the power of SMS is huge and only getting bigger.
Yeah.
Especially as we come to, deliverability challenges with email.
Absolutely.
Like I said, touched on earlier, we talked about the noise in the inbox. I think it's just a great way to differentiate. And like I said earlier, I think it's a really key opportunity to have a one-on-one conversation with your customer.
Absolutely.
Right? And that is really interesting because it is a totally different way to interact, and it gives you a lot of opportunities to converse with them. Obviously, you use it as a promo tool, just like you would email, certainly. New product releases, promos, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But from there, how you then continue to develop your audience directly and then make it more specific to SMS, I think is really the fun challenge, right? And I think the however you go about it, I think there's different ways to tackle that challenge, whether you're creating an SMS only persona, you're using it as a CX tool. I think, you're the chatbot queen. And I think we're only scratching the surface of ways to create automations for not just customer service oriented interactions, but personalization and recommendation opportunities, which I think is another core thing that really, certainly you can do a lot of that with email, and your email program should be doing that already. But I think you've got even more opportunity to do that because of the one-to-one nature of SMS.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the other thing to hit on too, and you briefly touched on this, but like, and there's tools out there that like have teams behind, I like to be a little tool agnostic around here. So like, there's tools out there that have people behind the scenes that are responding, right? Like to those abandoned cart emails, like all of that stuff. And it crushes because I have it across like some of my clients, right? Yeah. But outside of just like the SMS marketing tool piece, I also want to see more customer experience teams across brands involved in SMS. And I think we are. I think we definitely are. I think then there needs to be tighter integrations between the SMS tools and the help desk tools. Right?
Yeah.
So, you know, customer, I mean, this at the end of the day, this is a customer podcast, right? Customer actually has a really tight integration with Twilio and WhatsApp. And I think that crushes, dude. Like,
absolutely. And I think again, to kind of circle back to your original point about copy and brand, you really want all of that experience to feel consistent and cohesive. So every interaction your customer has with your brand should feel obviously nuanced depending on the situation, but certainly consistent and cohesive relative to tone. And I think that is, and especially in the context of SMS where you have very tight character limits for the most part, that's a big challenge. And I think that's really where kind of the magic comes in is, you know, you've got 90 to 117 characters, depending on what platform you're using. Shout out all the SMS platform people.
You know who you are.
Yes, you know who you are.
You all are probably listening to this.
We love you. But yeah, that is a challenge. And I think to me, when I think about it personally, the creative challenge, I like the restriction. To me, like, and again, this is like me really nerding out, like when I can dial in something and I can get hopefully in my mind, a powerful, thoughtful, funny, goal-achieving message in 100 characters, that to me is, I'm like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
And I think also as you build that out, then you really set yourself up for success with flows. Cause I think that's one thing you didn't touch on is like, certainly with email, but the flow opportunities afforded to you, you know, not just in SMS in general, but working in concert with your email, is really interesting, whether it be win back, whether it be replenishment, whether it be, you know, and again, and how you're, you know, to circle back to your customer service.
I see some brands, man, like on those flows. Sorry, I realize I cut you off.
No,
like,
it's okay.
I just want, like, I see some brands in like the flow process, like, dog, I've seen one flow with like 17 emails going through every single flavor of a product. And I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Like, that's not going to sell you.
Totally.
That's going to sell you probably in the first 5 emails.
Yes, I was just going to say, you got to get it done in a couple.
Yeah, but after the 12 others is like, you're just annoying me in my inbox now.
Yeah, and I think, you know, a lot of it comes down to timing too, you know, and who your people are. But I think now the opportunities to do some of that like regular interaction and create that relationship with your customer via SMS is really important, because like we have relationships with our friends, our peers, our family via text. If you can thoughtfully integrate that in a brand way that, you know, certainly, you know, people are going to look at it differently, but if you can integrate yourself into those sort of text-based relationships and make it feel authentic in a way that, you know, really keeps your customers engaged with you regularly in little bites.
Yeah.
And it's not just they're in front of their computer, they're on their phone in traffic, looking at an email or whatever. That's a really compelling opportunity to, you know, continue to deepen your relationship with your customers.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your thoughts on like the founder voice, like in text though, not in email, just like in text?
I think it's a great question. I think it's highly brand dependent.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think it crushes for everybody.
I don't think it crushes for everybody. I think 10 years ago, I think we're the founders of XYZ, we're telling you about our products was like a really common tactic. And I think worked really well. I think that is what the audience wanted in sort of like somewhat of a nascent industry, and a lot of new product categories were being developed. And I thought that was really important. I think you need more than that, but also I think depending on your company, depending on your brand, depending on who your audience is, I think, again, it's all about figuring out what your audiences are going to respond to from an authenticity standpoint. Yeah. If your audience really connects, you mentioned Everyday Dose, if they're really connecting with you as a founder and your founder story and they're responding to that, the numbers don't lie. You got to just be like, okay, the numbers are telling us where we're going, whether it's sales, whether it's engagement, they're going to tell you where to go. Ultimately, you certainly have to make space to try new things and fail, but the numbers will tell you where you need to go, what's working and what's not working. And whether going up, down, or stagnating, then you need to make your decisions in terms of where you want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And one, you talked about engagement and engagement metrics. And I want to just point this out that like, I think as marketers, we constantly look at like engagement metrics or like CTR rates, click-through rates, like all these things and like revenue from like the tools that we're utilizing, the marketing tools that we're utilizing. But I think like a very untapped area is actually looking at your CX. I mean, granted, I'm like,
Absolutely.
I am this person, right?
Yeah.
So these are the things that I look at. Like when I look at like Feastables, right? Like how I knew that we needed to do this chatbot and do these pathways is because I could see what was happening in like the customer service channels, right?
Absolutely.
And so like I was also comparing not only everything that I was seeing in like our SMS tools and like our email tools, but I was also comparing everything that I was like seeing in our customer service tools as well. And
Absolutely.
like creating a holistic like engagement metric.
Yeah,
right?
totally. I think it's such a great point. And I think to your point, you know, figuring out how to deepen that relationship between your CX and your marketing arm is really important. That is your front lines, and not just your front lines. Because you could argue that, you know, acquisition is certainly the front lines. This is a deeper level of engagement because these are people who have either actively bought your product or are actively very hardcore thinking about buying your product or engaging with you on a deeper level where they're asking questions. So I think that truly is the front lines of figuring out like really what's going on with your audience. Obviously, Instagram comment section is one thing.
Yeah.
Social is one thing. You know, other forms of communication is one thing, but truly your CX and is a way to get insights about what's going on with your customers. One, whether relative to problems and issues, or ultimately, hopefully you have a good relationship with your customers and they're shouting you out and letting you know that you're doing a great job, or they're giving you opportunities for new ideas by saying, hey, I would love it if you guys came up with this, made this product or whatever. And certainly that's not an easy thing, but at least it's really tapping into in real time what is going on with your customer base at a very deep level and thinking about how to, you know, thinking about CX as a crowdsourcing mechanism for, you know, your products and your marketing and how you're connecting is a great way to do it. Whether it's a product's landing really well, there's issues with delivery or whatever it is, you're really learning at a deep level what's going on with your customers. And I think how you translate that interaction into other opportunities is huge.
One question that I have for you, because you are in copy, right? What's your thoughts on AI?
Yeah, a great question. Hot button issue. The amount of friends that have like texted me like, hey, like say goodbye to your job. AI is here. No, I think it's a great question. I think it's a fascinating issue, truly.
Yeah.
I think to me, I look at it as this is a tool, right? I think certainly we're all going to be replaced by robots in one way or another in 50 years. We're not there yet. But to me, I look at it as this is a tool to make me better at what I do.
Yeah.
How do I figure that out? How do I welcome change and use it to my advantage to help me do a better job? I personally don't think that, obviously I'm biased, but I think AI has a long way to go in many respects relative to copy. I think it is astounding in certain areas, and I think it should be used as a tool in those areas. So I think it's just like anything, like any piece of technology, it's not to be feared, it's to be embraced, it's to be figured out, it's to be mastered, it's to be used as a tool to make you better. I personally don't look at it as a replacement for my writing. I think about it as a tool to create things at scale, right? Or to create variants for testing, for large volume of copy that can be iterated on. And I am still admittedly a novice. I'm trying to learn more about it because I'm looking at this as like a challenge. I personally don't think it's a replacement for like tight, effective brand marketing copy, but it's a great tool for, you know, SEO driven content that doesn't need to get a lot of eyes, but is going to juice your search, or again, creating options at scale, things like that. So that's how I look at it. Certainly it's a little crazy and to feel like there's robots that are doing my job. But again, I think about like, we can't sit around and say like, it's kind of a fad or whatever, like it's here. So for me, I'm approaching it like, I want to learn as much as I can about it, figure out how it can make me better, and I can use it as a tool in ways that make sense. I don't think it's that effective of a tool at the moment for my day-to-day or for any good copywriter's day-to-day. But, I think, does it give certain people a cost-effective way to achieve things if copywriting is not their strong suit? Sure. I think as, pure writing, I think it's more a tool for specific things. And, I think it remains to be seen like where it goes. I think it's an interesting tool to have at our disposal. And I think that's how everyone should look at it. Whether you're crunching numbers, writing copy, design, photo retouching.
I mean, everything helps us move faster.
I think we should look at it as like an assistant, right?
Yeah.
I forget who coined that phrase, but that was really a reframing of AI as an assistant and to help you do certain aspects of your job better and quicker. And I think that's really where it's at. But I think, again, I'm trying to learn more about it so I can, what is the phrase? It's like keep your friends close and your enemies closer, I guess.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Keep AI so as
like,
your
I see you, robots.
Yeah.
What's up?
Me, doggy.
Yeah, what's up? Come at me.
Well, man, I feel like we can be vibing all day long, but unfortunately, we are at the end of the road, like a Boys to Men song. I got to stop quoting that because that was in another episode. Anyway, Scott, tell the homies where they can find you.
You can find me on LinkedIn. We can connect. We can do all that. Scott Wicken. And you can see my work at Dr.Squatch and other places. But yeah, this has been such a pleasure to join you here and talk all things copy and SMS. And it's been a blast.
Thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah.
And I will see and talk to you all next Thursday. Toodles. Hey, wow, you made it to the end of the episode. That means that you like me and I like you, which also means you should subscribe to this show.